calls it a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by AJ Gonzalez. AJ, I'm going to be honest, it's nice to see a little highlight video of some Dodger memories, some positive memories after what we've just endured. Give me an emotional check-in, AJ, on how we're feeling on on what's been a pretty brutal weekend for Dodgers fans.
Is that is that captionable?
There you go. Yeah, it's swept by the Giants. A rough month, as we will get into. But I mean, AJ, as we're sitting here, the Dodgers get beat in extra innings Friday. They get smoked in historic fashion. Again, we'll get to it on Saturday. And then today, even not really a competitive game, never really in it. They lose 7-3, score one run with a couple outs in the ninth. I mean, how do you honestly navigate sort of the emotions and not get too low on a team like this, but maybe also start to think some thoughts you didn't imagine yourself thinking a couple weeks ago?
It's that last part is kind of the big part. Like, some thoughts I may have not had at the forefront of my brain a few weeks ago are we getting the first mediocre Dodger team in the past decade?
Yeah.
Like, is that what we've got? Overall, like, this series was really frustrating. Humiliating, I would say, actually, beyond frustrating.
Yeah.
And there's a lot you can blame, the obvious being the pitching, all that, and I'm sure we'll get to all that. But it's one of those, close your eyes and be patient kind of moments.
Okay.
With a little bit of close your eyes, be patient, they're going to be better, but they're not going to win. This is not a 110 win Dodger team. Just not.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of the options that Dodgers fans are staring themselves in the face and staring down, I should say, right now, which is, do we just close our eyes, grit our teeth, and say, hey, you know what, in the long run, this is going to work itself out? Do we get totally depressed by the fact that, the Dodgers have lost 18 of their last 30? They're in third place in the National League West. They're a game up on for the final wild card spot as we sit here today. Do we go totally depressed? Do we sit somewhere in the middle and say, hey, they're injured? Hey, there's a lot of rookies getting their feet wet. There's kind of a storm of worst case scenario that has all hit at one point. I think those are the options that we have. And so the plan for tonight is we're going to talk about where the Dodgers are at today. We're going to be honest. We're going to tell the truth about what the last 30 days has looked like and where we are. And then we're going to talk panic levels. I want to break it down position group by position group. And AJ say, hey, where's our panic level with the rotation? What's our panic level with the bullpen? What's our panic level with the lineup? And even what's our panic level with the manager and the coaching staff as well? Folks that are joining us live on YouTube, on Facebook, as always, it's going to be an interactive show. When I ask for what our panic level is, I'm going to ask you to share yours. We'll put some of those responses up on the screen. And then, of course, as we always do, we will end the show with some questions as well. Those of you joining after the fact, watching on YouTube or listening via podcast, we greatly appreciate you as well. You can play along in the comments below if you're watching this after the fact. But here's where the Dodgers are at. In their last 30 games, they are 12-18. They have lost series to the Yankees, the Reds, the Phillies, and the Giants, while barely beating the White Sox, taking 2 out of 3, one of those being an extra innings victory. They are in third place in the National League West, falling a half game behind the Giants, as I mentioned. They are currently the final wild card team, just one game up on those Phillies. From an injury perspective, that's going to be one of the big storylines here. Max Muncy joins the injured list this past week. Chris Taylor, not on the injured list, seems to be day-to-day, got a cortisone shot in his knee. They are, quote, hopeful that he avoids the injured list, but with all Dodger injury updates, take it with a grain of salt. The good news is Freddie Freeman did report after today's game that his wrist was fine, did not get any treatment, even though Dave Roberts said he was getting treatment on it, and said he's fine, nothing to worry about, no issues there. Julio Urias expected to miss about another week and a half, maybe even 2 weeks. There's rumblings that maybe Kansas City, June 30th, is a target date for him, so something to keep an eye on there. They have 11 players, AJ, on the 60-day IL. They have 4 more on the normal injured list. And the result of that is kind of an astonishing stat. The Dodgers had 8 rookies play this weekend against the Giants. Emmett Sheehan, Bobby Miller, Michael Busch, James Outman, Johnny DeLuca, Miguel Vargas, as well as a pair of relief pitchers, Nick Robertson and Brian Hudson, also playing for the Dodgers. So 8 rookies for a Dodgers team, as you pointed out, AJ, that we haven't seen that from in a long time. It all comes to a head, as I mentioned, this weekend. The Dodgers get swept by the Giants at home, no less, and in embarrassing fashion. They blow a 4-0 lead Friday and lose in extras. They lose 15-0 on Saturday, which was both the worst defeat in franchise for the franchise since 2013 and the largest home shutout loss in franchise history since dating back to 1898. Sunday, 7-3 loss to complete the sweep. They go, Emmett Sheehan gave him 6 no-hit innings, scoreless innings to start the series. AJ, afterwards, 29-4. The Giants outscore them down the stretch. All that is an overwhelming amount of negativity. And I mean, I don't know what you do with that. They're in 3rd place in the National League West, AJ. I never could have seen this coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people predicted this season would not be like their most on fire roster. But I don't, like you said, I don't think most of us saw them slipping into 3rd already in the middle of June.
Yeah.
You can attribute a lot of it to injuries. That's a fair thing to say because the injuries have been pretty catastrophic.
Yeah.
But when you rely on the rookies, who I want to say have been so fun to watch because they're very talented. I think most of them are going to be like solid big league players. And as Dodger fans, we haven't had that opportunity to be that spoiled in a while. We usually get to see these huge names with a top-heavy roster. But the problem is that some of these rookies aren't ready. We saw guys like Stone and Grove get roughed up. Pepio's vanished to the injured list.
Yeah.
And when this team isn't hitting, they aren't winning.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a tough spot to be in because I'm with you. I like seeing the rookies. It's fun. We've talked a lot on previous shows about just, hey, we're not used to getting to see all these rookies making debuts and getting chances. But to your point, some have been great. Bobby Miller, James Outman for the first month of the season. But Miguel Vargas has been disappointing. James Outman, since the first month of the season, has been very disappointing. Michael Busch hasn't come up and torn the cover off the ball, though I'll admit the sample size with him is small. Johnny DeLuca probably got called up about 6 to 12 months earlier than they were hoping to. He's looked okay, but again, a 200 batting average or something with 0 slug so far for him. And then you've got the Emmett Sheehan was good. Gavin Stone was terrible. Michael Grove has been disappointing. Robertson has not been good after a first appearance that was good. And so it's fun to see rookies, but we're also reminded of maybe why the Dodgers historically have slow played these guys like they have. I think the timeline on a lot of the guys we're talking about was not 2023. That was not the plan. And you know that when a guy like Sheehan doesn't even make an appearance at AAA before getting called up. So that's one of the tough pieces. But let's get into kind of the meat that I want to talk about tonight, which is on a scale of 1 to 10, I want you to give me your panic number for each of the major position groups, okay? Now, I'll define 1 to 10 like this. A panic level of 1 means not worried at all. Dodgers are going to win the NL West by 5 games. Blip in the radar, small dip. This is going to be smooth sailing 2 to 3 months from now, okay? That's a 1. We're not panicked at all. A 10 is you're texting your buddies and you're saying, hey, what do you think we could get for Julio Urias on the trade market this trade deadline? Okay. 10 is Dodgers should be sellers. Forget going for it. Forget acquiring anybody. This team is trash. Don't invest anything more into this. Tank, rebuild the farm system, and then plan for 2024. Okay. That's 10. So on each of these groups, you got to give me a number 1 to 10. Let's start with the rotation, AJ. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your panic level for the rotation? And again, folks joining us live, throw your number on the in the comments, and we will throw some of those up as we go. So 1 to 10, 1 being we're going to win the division, nothing to worry about. 10 being sell everybody, plan for the future. Give me a number for the starting rotation.
A 5.
Okay, a 5. That's a small number. I mean, we're gonna get sort of some a barometer of if that's a big panic or small panic for you. But talk me through how you get to a 5.
All right, before everyone roasts me in the comments, I'm at a 5. Because Julio is going to come back, and we don't need Julio to be the Cy Young, the one of the better pitchers in the league to be competitive. As long as he's good, as long as he's solid. I'm hoping by the end of the year we'll get Dustin May back, but that hasn't looked good.
Yeah.
Walker Buehler might make a September comeback, but obviously he'll be on a very, very, very tight innings crunch. The 5 is because I think the Dodgers should make a move for some starters to compete down the road and not sell and rebuild. But yeah, 5 means that there's a problem that should be addressed this year, because Kershaw has been pretty good, but he's got a lot of he's got a lot of miles on those arms, and Tony Gonsolin's FIP has been extremely high, and today we saw that kind of level out a bit, but he's still a pretty solid starter.
Yeah.
If they pick up an arm or two and a couple of guys come back, I think it's a competitive starting rotation. I really do.
So are you baking into your 5 sort of the assumption that there's help incoming for this group?
With the glass half full, yeah.
Okay.
The Dodgers still have a good enough farm system to sell a bit, but not sell as in to like rebuild, but to bring some stuff back. They've got a lot of arms and players that they've clearly been advertising for other teams.
Yeah.
Which I sneakily still feel might be part of it.
Yeah. For me, like I'm looking through the comments. I would say the average is probably 7.5. We've got some people in the 4, 5, and 6 range. We've got some people in the 8, 9, and 10 range as well. For me, it's a 6.5. And here's how I get there. Kershaw, I'm good. I feel good about Kershaw. Obviously, there's a caveat with his health and can he make 30 to 32 starts in a season? But so far, so good. I don't think he's at a point where we just bake in that he's going to miss 6 starts at some point. So Kershaw has been good, not worried there. Bobby Miller has been very good. Yes, I know he had a blip in the radar start this past week. I don't think he's like 20 scoreless innings. I don't think that's sustainable. I also don't think we're going to see a whole lot of games where the box score looks like it did against the Giants. And I'm with you. I would even factor in Tony Gonsolin as a guy that I don't feel terrible about because, and I want to make this note about Bobby Miller and Gonsolin and get your thoughts, AJ. I actually think Miller and Gonsolin both got screwed a bit by the Dodgers bullpen in 2 separate ways. The first way they got screwed is because they both left with guys on base and the bullpen promptly allowed those guys to come in. For Bobby Miller, it was it was Alex Vesia giving up a grand slam. For Tony Gonsolin, it was Victor Gonzalez coming in and giving an RBI single. So they didn't get any help in the earned run department from the guys coming in after him. But I would argue, AJ, that both of those guys actually got left in way longer than they should have because the bullpen. Now, I know we had people in the comments saying, I can't believe Dave took out Emmett Sheehan too soon. Well, I would argue he probably overreacted with Miller and Gonsolin. Here's what I mean. Bobby Miller, rookie, 4 starts in his career. He allowed 4 earned runs in the 5th inning and was brought back out for the 6th inning. Okay, he gives up a walk, an infield single, a pop out, a single, and a strikeout, and then is taken out. He's allowed to give up 3 base runners in the 6th inning after giving up 4 runs in the 5th inning. Why, AJ? Because the bullpen is so bad that Dave Roberts knew his only chance was Bobby Miller getting him 1, maybe even 1.5 more innings. Tony Gonsolin gives up 2 earned runs in the 4th, an earned run in the 5th. And then let me read you how his 6th inning went before he was taken out. Walk, ground out, double, single, walk, strikeout. Walk, ground out, double, single. Why is he still in the game? Walk, strikeout. It's because the bullpen sucks. So I would say these are arguments in favor of Miller and Gonsolin. I think both of those guys got screwed because Dave Roberts knew that those guys in the 6th inning with all those pitches, struggling, getting seen for a 3rd time, were still better options than the Dodger bullpen.
I mean, everything you said, I've got no arguments. We'll get to the panic level on the bullpen in a minute.
It's going to be a big number, everybody. Don't worry.
But yeah, like the bullpen did a disservice to some pretty decent starts. Miller's FIP, which for everyone in the comments who doesn't know, your FIP is the thing that you compare to the ERA to kind of level out whether they've been getting lucky or not, in layman's terms. It's pretty solid. They're pretty close.
Yeah.
So he's been doing his job. Like we said earlier, Gonsolin's FIP was a little high, and that nasty outing was kind of coming, and that's fine. It still makes him a good pitcher. Every pitcher has bad days. With a decent bullpen, with guys not coming in and not always allowing the inherited runners to score, they don't have to throw up zeros every time. But right now we're talking about the other side of it. They're giving up runs every single time. Yeah. With a decent bullpen, we're having a different conversation about the starting rotation, even amongst all these injuries.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. I think the bullpen has been made to look worse than it actually is because of the way that the bullpen has done before it. So all that's to say, I feel great about Kershaw. I feel really good about Miller. I think Gonsolin's fine. I'm with you. I still am a believer in Julio, even if it's 2 more weeks till he comes back. I just find it hard to believe that the cliff that he is falling off is as steep as it seems to have been so far. I hope he hits the mental reset button by going down, getting some rehab starts, taking a break as he's healed from this injury, and I think Julio will be fine. So if you give me Kershaw, Miller, Julio, Gonsolin as your first 4, that's a great 1 through 4 in a rotation. Yeah. The 5th spot then becomes, do you trade for somebody? If you can, great. If not, I mean, Emmett Sheehan looked good in his debut. Michael Grove, Gavin Stone, like those guys haven't been awesome. I'm off the Noah Syndergaard. If he never pitches for the Dodgers again, I'll feel great about that. Does Dustin May come back at some point? Does Ryan Pepio come back at some point? I think you just have kind of a rotating list of options in that 5-hole that even a guy like Michael Grove, who has been bad, like I think Grove's probably like true talent level is somewhere in the like 5 innings, 3 to 4 earned runs. That's not very good, but it's also not going to kill you if that's your 5th starter. And I think Grove could give you that. Sheehan might be better than that. Landon Knack might be better than that. And so I just look big picture at those 5 guys, assuming nobody comes back healthy, then they're okay. And if you get May back or Pepio back or in a miracle world, Buehler back, then all of a sudden that situation starts to look a lot better. So 6.5 rotation panic for me, 5 for you is what it sounds like we're going with. Anything to add to that before we move on to everybody's favorite topic, the bullpen?
No, let's do it.
Okay, bullpen. 10 is we're shopping Julio Urias, pending free agent on the market. 1 is, hey, nothing to worry about here. Give me your number for the bullpen.
You ever sit in one of your math classes in high school and just type on a calculator until the number became like an exponential equation that you couldn't type in? I'm somewhere around there with the bullpen, but it's also a more nuanced conversation than I think some people are ready to have.
Okay.
Traditionally, making trades for your bullpen is just not a good idea. We've seen teams in the past, like the Yankees and other teams, like just load up on the bullpen at the trade deadline and get ridiculous names, build like just a behemoth bullpen, and it be a complete disaster. We've seen some teams with like a mediocre bullpen all of a sudden ride the wave and have an incredible bullpen that just performs in the playoffs. Maybe that doesn't look good on paper, but does the thing. Up until the Padres series last year, we had guys in the bullpen that you were like, they're not going to do well, and they did until they didn't. So am I panicking about their performance? Yeah, the numbers don't lie. It's been horrific. The Dodgers have the 25th worst ERA in the majors, a sentence I never thought I would utter. Yeah. And so much of that does hinge on the starters, but obviously the bullpen has put gasoline on every fire that the starters have had.
Yeah.
Something has to be done. I don't care if they go out and get some guy from Tampa Bay that we've never heard of or some guy from any team that we've never heard of, but some cavalry needs to happen. We got to get some guys back from the injured list. Hopefully that can be a plan. Hopefully, because Buehler's not going to come back in September and pitch 8 innings, throw 100 pitches in the playoffs. Maybe he can come out of the bullpen. Maybe he can be the Julio Urias that we had in 2020. Yeah. But yeah, my panic over basically anyone coming out of that bullpen not named Evan Phillips is through the roof.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to get an 8.5 from me. And the only reason it's not 10 is because if you want to be glass, I'm not even going to say half full, quarter full on the bullpen. It's that the Dodgers still have the most important person in their bullpen. They have an elite closer in Evan Phillips. I truly believe he's that good. And that's the most important thing. Like, we're not talking about, hey, they've got 3 guys they feel decent about in the 7th inning, but holy smokes, nobody to close the door. They've got a guy to close the door. They've just got to find a few dudes to get it from the 6th inning to the 9th inning. So I feel good about Phillips. I would add I feel good about Caleb Ferguson. I know he hit a bump in the road, a few bad games in a row, like 3 or 4 bad stretch. But Ferguson to me is still a guy that I think in the long run, it's going to work itself out. I see you sort of rubbing your eye there, AJ. It sounds like you disagree with me on Ferguson. So give me your Ferguson. I know you were in Philly for some of those games. So give me your Caleb Ferguson take.
I'm biased because I was at that game where he gave up the walk-off to Schwarber. I looked at my best friend, I looked at my mom and dad, and I said, you know what's coming, right? And they're like, no, he's going to do great. And I was like, I started packing up my stuff. So I'm a little biased because I was at the game.
Yeah, that hurts.
My level
It hurts different in person.
It really does. But my confidence in Ferguson is not rock bottom.
Okay.
He looks pretty solid most of the time. And you got to tip your cap because sometimes Kyle Schwarber is just impossible to pitch to. So, yeah, my level of panic with him isn't terrible. My level of panic with Victor Gonzalez isn't terrible. They're two solid lefties out of the bullpen. I don't want to be a mean person and say anything else about Alex Vesia other than I hope he likes Oklahoma City barbecue. But, we've got those two solid lefties. Like you said, we've got one of the best closers in baseball with Phillips. I don't have a huge confidence in Gratterall, but I love his enthusiasm, and I think that he could put it together at least enough to be decent.
Yeah.
And if we get one or two arms back, whether that's through coming back from injury or acquiring them, or sometimes the Dodgers will get some surprise arm from the middle of nowhere who just pitches like the second coming of prime Goose Gossage for some reason. So like I said, my panic level is high, but you're right. We do have some arms in there who could find it and perform well in the postseason.
Yeah, and I see some people saying, "Hey, Phillips is a fireman." Fine. My point is, you're looking for one elite reliever at least in your bullpen. They have that. Then I think the problem is they've got your quote unquote stereotypical ninth inning guy. I would say maybe Ferguson's an eighth inning guy, maybe. And then they've got a bunch of sixth and seventh inning guys. I think Gratterall's on my list of I don't love, I would say it's Phillips, and then it's a gap, and then it's Caleb Ferguson, and then it's a huge gap after Ferguson. And then you get to Gratterall, who doesn't miss enough bats, but somehow manages to limit the damage. Shelby Miller, I would put in the same category as a guy that the numbers aren't awesome. He walks too many people, and yet he strikes a bunch of guys out and is able to kind of limit the damage. Those are guys that if that's your sixth or seventh best reliever, you're feeling good. The problem is I just listed them third and fourth. So then you get into a whole nother gap. You've got Almonte. I would put Victor Gonzalez. I know we had a nice little month run there, but it scares me that Victor Gonzalez of 2020 showed up for a month and then just seems to have disappeared again. I want to believe in Yency Almonte. This stuff is so good when it is right, and yet it just feels like every 3 or 4 days it's not right. And then it's another huge gap to everyone else. And so I'm with you. If I had to pick the number of guys in the bullpen that I trust right now that I would want in my 8-man bullpen, it's probably 4, maybe 5. I would do Phillips, Ferguson, Gratterall, Shelby Miller, and maybe give me Yency Almonte or Victor Gonzalez. Maybe those 5 are guys that I trust. I mean, even Justin Brule feels like a better option than a lot of the guys we've been trotting out there. But I think the problem with the Dodgers bullpen is they're 3 or 4 guys short in that group. To your point, is it JP Fireeisen, Blake Trinan, Daniel Hudson coming back off the injured list? The Daniel Hudson news has been good. He seems like he could be activated within a week. That would be a huge boost if he's actually able to stay healthy because he's really, really good when he's right. Trinan and Fireeisen still feel like a long way away. And then AJ, the other thing I would add on the bullpen, we keep talking about all these young arms, Grove, Sheehan, etc. If the Dodgers can ever get their rotation figured out, if they add an arm there, or if May comes back and Pepio comes back, Grove throwing 97 with a couple nice off-speed pitches could easily be an answer out there. Emmett Sheehan, who tops out at 99, that could be a nice landing spot for some of those young arms, Gavin Stone even, who haven't been able to figure it out in the rotation. Hey, can you give me one good inning and, go from there? So that would be my one thought. I see we have a super chat, but any thoughts there on the bullpen before we get to this, Francisco? We appreciate the super chat there. We're going to get to it momentarily. Any thoughts on that idea of, hey, maybe if you figure out the rotation, add an arm, maybe even 2, and then let the bullpen figure itself out by moving some of those number 5, 6, 7, 8 starter types into the bullpen?
I love that idea. I'll be honest, I hadn't seen Emmett Sheehan pitch until I saw him the other night, and that fastball is plus, man. It's not even. It's obviously it's not the velocity on its own because Bobby Miller throws 100,000 miles an hour, but it had so much deception, so much movement. That thing played, and if we could just get enough arms back that he can go down to AAA, get a little more seasoning and fine tuning, I could see Emmett Sheehan either making spot starts in the postseason or being that guy out of the bullpen. I love that idea. Or any of the guys you mentioned do have the potential to come out of the bullpen and throw fire.
Yeah, because, I mean, look, Robert said, hey, Syndergaard's not an option out there, which makes sense. He throws 93. That's not going to play up. If Grove is giving you 97 as a starter, if Sheehan is touching 98.5, 99 as a starter, and you turn to those guys and say, hey, I need 3 outs, then all of a sudden, that's a different story. Grove, who we know has struggled mightily against lefties, you could put him into situations where he's only going to see righties. I just think those are options, but until those guys aren't needed in the rotation and need to stay stretched out because they could be needed in the rotation, it's a tougher spot to be in. Francisco with the super chat again. Thank you so much. We need to stop signing pitchers that never pitch. I imagine we're talking about guys like JP Fireisen, who was acquired and is not pitched, Danny Duffy types. Jimmy Nelson on a rehab assignment, AJ. Might be seeing him soon. Noah Syndergaard is on the IL. It does feel, yeah, exactly. The Dodgers do seem to have, look, they go, somebody put it, if you want to put it in as negative a light as possible, the Dodgers go dumpster diving. When it comes to starters, when it comes to relievers, Alex Reyes, probably the best example of the bunch. They pay $1.5 million, and he's never going to appear for them, at least not this year. Do you think that strategy is worth the investment of just throwing darts at guys who may or may not end up getting healthy and getting right? Or do you wish the Dodgers would spend more time kind of upping the cost and just going and getting a guy that you feel like you can trust a little bit more?
The bullpen is buying bullpen arms or trading for bullpen arms is almost never advisable. As far as giving away too much for them going to a team and getting their best reliever. And Andrew Friedman and company, for whatever criticism they may deserve or not deserve for this particular season, are very good at finding arms and getting gold out of them. I mean, for all the people in the comments who are understandably lamenting dumpster diving for arms, I don't look at it that way. I look at it more as when you go to Walmart and you find a DVD or a CD in there that you love, because we've been talking
DVDs
about
and CDs, huh, AJ?
Yeah.
It's 2023.
Hey man, so sometimes you got to go old school. And my perfect segue into that is that's what Evan Phillips is. They pulled him out of Tampa Bay nowhere, and all of a sudden he's the best reliever on our team. So I think that they have to go that route, use their brilliant team of analytical minds who find these things in a guy's mechanics that they can fix, tweak, or find to use better.
Yeah.
And just fix them, because they've done it before. It doesn't look good this year with the guys that they have, but that doesn't mean that they can't find it again.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Look, Alex Reyes, they cost him $1.5 million. That's small potatoes. There's a reason he only cost that much, because it was a high risk, high reward. The Dodgers could afford to make it. It didn't work itself out. The reason they have Daniel Hudson, the reason they have Blake Trinan is because they went and got those guys on bargains. Some of these guys, Brandon Morrow, I remember back in the day. I mean, they take chances on these guys, and sometimes it works out and you get way more than what you're paying them, or sometimes it doesn't work itself out. And so if the Dodgers had built their entire offseason strategy, their roster strategy, their bullpen strategy on Alex Reyes being healthy, then that would be a problem. But I don't think they did. I think we talked about, they have 11 guys on the 60-day IL and 4 more on the 10 or the 15-day IL. So that's 15 players who are on the 40-man roster who are on the injured list, 11 of whom are out for 2+ months. I think that tells you that there's been some degree of bad luck involved with some of these. So I understand the concern, Francisco, but I would say that the real problem the Dodgers are having is not with the Alex Reyes types out there. It's with the guys, because Shelby Miller is another perfect example. The Shelby Miller, they paid basically nothing for. And so if I told you they gave Shelby Miller $4 million instead of, $1.5 million to him and $1.5 million to Alex Reyes, I think all of us would say, hey, fine, Shelby Miller has been worth that. I think sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. The issue has been with Yency Almonte and Brusdar Graterol and Victor Gonzalez and the guys that maybe were in-house that they were expecting to be a part of the solution that haven't been healthy or just haven't been effective. So, again, we appreciate the super chat there, Francisco. But I think that's where I land on the bullpen is I think the good news is if we're talking back end of the bullpen, I think the Dodgers have a solution there in Phillips. And I think, again, you could make a case that Caleb Ferguson as a high leverage arm, lefty high leverage arm, is probably high end. I would say that. I understand the scars and the wounds that you're carrying around, AJ, from your trip to Philadelphia. I think the problem is they need about 3 or 4 guys to get from the 7th inning, where they've got Gratterall and Shelby Miller, that you feel okay, to the 9th inning. That's the gap. And not only have Gratterall and Shelby Miller been asked to be high leverage guys, and that's blown up in their face, but then the guys that are filling in behind him in the 6th inning, 7th inning have been a mess. I mean, they had runners on 2nd and 3rd in the 8th inning with a 1-run lead against the Giants, and they went to a guy who got DFA'd a day later, who had an ERA over 10, named Taylor Scott, who we're probably never ever going to hear from. And that's who they went to. And part of it was that was the best option they had, as sad as it sounds. And so I think that's indicative of just how rough it has been in the bullpen. All right, let's move along here. Let's talk lineup. Panic level with the offense, AJ. Again, one is, hey, this team's going to win the division by 5 games. It's going to be smooth sailing, not sweating at all. And 10 is, hey, what do you think we could get for some of the Dodgers' better players if we wanted to trade them today? You were at a 6.5, I believe. Were you a 6? What were you, 6 on the starting rotation? 5.
About a 5.
You were 5 on the rotation. 5. I was a 6.5. You were $1 million on the bullpen. I was an 8. Give me your number for the lineup.
A 3 or a 4.
Okay.
They're still top 5 in runs scored in the league. They're still in the top 10 in most of the offensive categories. The reason I'm not at a 1 is because they're like that internet meme that shows the drawing of the horse, where the first third of the horse is like a perfect drawing, and then the next 2/3 is drawn by like someone like me that has no artistic ability. When those top guys aren't hitting, they are struggling. The thing that's been carrying them is that most of those top guys have been hitting, and guys who we weren't sure were going to hit, like JD Martinez, up until a week ago, have been mashing. So of all, and I'm just going to like use statistics. All right. Like there's no narratives that hold strong when you have statistics. The Dodgers are still one of the better teams in baseball at scoring runs.
Yeah.
Do they need to get better at getting more production out of the bottom of their lineup? Yes, that's where my concern is. Do they need to be more consistent with hitting with runners in scoring position? Yes, but they're also one of the better teams in 2-out runs.
Yep.
So my panic level with the offense is not that high. They're still scoring runs at a decent rate, save this series for whatever reason. But getting their health back, like getting like guys like Muncy back and hitting properly, like the way he was. Maybe picking up one more guy if they make a little trade, but like I'm not talking Ohtani or whatever. Their offense is still pretty good.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've got a 3 for the lineup, and I know it's sort of, you've got some people in that 3, 4, 5 range and some people in the 9 range. And I've said this before, so I apologize if this sounds like a broken record. But one thing that I think makes this hard is when the team is 12 and 18, it's hard to parse out which part of the team you want to blame the most. The Dodgers offense has not been the problem. If the Dodgers bullpen was league average, the numbers on the offense would not be worrisome. Like, people would not be freaked out about this offense. I think it's the fact that, when you score 5 or 6 runs and still lose, you're still sort of jaded at the offense because you feel like there should have been more, when in reality, if your offense scores 6 runs, you need to be winning those games. And the Dodgers offense has been scoring 6 runs a lot. I mean, you mentioned it when you're talking about offensive production as far as runs go. The Dodgers among the tops in the league, weighted runs created plus. Dodgers 4th in all of Major League Baseball. Okay, so they have the 4th best offense according to weighted runs created plus in the entire league. If you want to look at something like OPS, guess what? 4th in all of Major League Baseball. The Dodgers offense has been good. And when you look at the roster, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith, that's an elite 1, 2, and 3. Like, not many teams in baseball, if any, can boast a 3 sort of, whether that's top of the lineup, middle of the lineup, whatever, 3 guys as good as those 3. There's not many teams that can say that. JD Martinez, he's cooled off the last 2 weeks, but on the whole, hard to be disappointed with the production he has given you. Max Muncy has struggled mightily the last 30 days. Okay, weighted runs created plus of 42. For those unfamiliar with that number, 100 is league average. So if you're 100, that means you're an average hitter. If you're 42, that means you're 58% worse than league average. That has been Max Muncy over the last 30 days. So he has struggled. Still one of the top 5 to 10 in home runs, though. David Peralta has been very, very, very good the last month. Jason Hayward has been very good this season. So all of a sudden, we're talking Mookie, Freddie, Will, Peralta, Hayward, JD Martinez. There's 6 guys. Max Muncy is 7. Okay. There's 7 guys that I would say you feel pretty good about on the whole. After that, I admit there's some questions. Okay. Miguel Vargas, incredibly disappointing. James Outman has been terrible the last month and a half. Miguel Rojas, I know he had 3 2-hit games in a row. He still has a 40 rated runs created plus over the last 2 weeks. He's been terrible. Austin Barnes, don't even get me started. Chris Taylor has been basically league average. So we'll take that with Chris Taylor, right? If he's your 7th or 8th best hitter, it's fine. And then you've got the young guys, Johnny DeLuca, Michael Busch, small sample sizes. So I would say, give me your number, AJ. We're agreed on the 3. Mookie, Freddie, Will. We trust all those guys. JD Martinez, are you at a place of trusting JD Martinez right now?
I can't believe it, but yes. My only concern with JD is his, I'm not going to say age, but his wear and tear on his body, whether he's going to be hitting his weight in late like August. But he's been great so far, save the last 2 weeks, but every good hitter is allowed to have a slump. Yeah. But he looks pretty locked in otherwise.
Okay. So you're good on JD. So there's 4. Give me, well, I guess we could combine these guys because it's kind of a platoon, but Peralta and Hayward. I assume you trust that group. Peralta against, what is it? Peralta against lefties and Hayward against righties?
But both of them against righties for the most part, I trust. Peralta was a better hitter throughout his entire career than he was showing in the first 2 months. In the last, I think, 30 days, he's picked it back up. I think people should put more faith in his bat. He's looked good lately, and I do have faith in him because he has the track record. We're not talking about a guy who doesn't have a good track record.
And we're not talking about a guy that you need to be your number 3 hitter. We're talking about a guy who's going to be your 6 hitter, 7 hitter on a normal day. Where are you at on Max Muncy? We know the struggles last year. He was good to start the season. I mentioned it. He's been pretty rough the last 30 days, of course, currently on the injured list. Where are you at with Muncy?
I'm honestly a little low on Max. He's been kind of the Dave Kingman of our offense. Sorry for the old throwback, but he's been the Mark Reynolds, the guy who hits for a ton of power, but otherwise just strikes out a lot. And he's not walking quite as high as he used to be. And he used to just get on base more with hits. Look, like I know batting average is like an old school stat that not like everybody uses because it doesn't tell the whole story. But when you're hitting that low, it needs to increase a little bit. Yeah. So I'm a little concerned with Max, but I also do think he picks it back up when he's back and healthy.
191 batting average for Muncy, but an OPS around 800, 15% above league average for the season. Does have 18 home runs as well. That's where it gets tough because then it comes to Vargas, Outman, Taylor, Rojas, Barnes, DeLuca, Busch. Is there anybody in that group that you feel okay about? Are you ready to buy back in on Chris Taylor being at least just an average hitter? Outman, do you have any confidence Outman or Vargas will figure this out? Where are you at on because I would say the Dodgers' problem is that they can go on a good day 1 through 7 and you feel good about the 7. It's just a matter of if Austin Barnes is in there. He's the worst hitter in Major League Baseball. I tweeted this out. His OPS this season is 60 points worse than Clayton Kershaw's career OPS. Clayton Kershaw is a hitter. So Clayton Kershaw in his career is a better hitter than Austin Barnes has been this year. Miguel Rojas, one of the worst hitters in all of Major League Baseball last season, has been a little bit better. He's twice as good as Austin Barnes in the OPS category. But those guys, if you have Rojas and Barnes in the same lineup, it's brutal. But I think you can put lineups together where if we're talking about Vargas and Outman as your 8-9 hitters, that's a different story. If Chris Taylor's in that mix. So I think 7, 8, and 9 is where it gets dicey. But I would point out, AJ, most teams in the league probably don't love their 7, 8, 9 hitters.
I'm not super confident with Vargas right now. I'm just going to tell the truth. I love the kid. I love how hard he works, but his approach at the plate's been rough. He's got a lot of swing and miss tendencies on pitches right in the middle of the zone. And it's just been a huge struggle for him. The problem with Austin Barnes, I have 2 competing thoughts. He's horrid. He's horrible. I don't want to watch him at the plate anymore. Like, I think he's better up going up there without a bat.
Miguel Vargas in spring training style.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not kidding, because somehow he still draws walks. Like, if I was up there, I'd throw him meatballs.
Yeah.
The problem is we don't have another catcher, and Will Smith cannot catch every day.
Yeah.
So we're still going to see Barnesy.
We're going to get the Hunter Fiducia crowd. The Hunter Fiducia hive is going to be in the comments momentarily. So just keep your eyes out for that, AJ. He's the Dodgers AAA catcher who at one point was tearing it up. I haven't checked in. I'll get the Hunter Fiducia update as you finish your thought here.
Austin Barnes has the AJ Ellis contract. He ain't going down there because number 22 isn't going to get rid of him. It's fine. I just don't want to see him in the lineup nearly as much as we should be. I definitely don't want him pinch hitting under any circumstances.
Yeah.
I'd rather Dave Roberts send Dave Roberts to the plate.
Yeah.
At this point than Austin Barnes. I feel like Outman, he's not going to hit like he did in April, but he's had a few good looks the last week or so. Yeah. He had a nice hit earlier today. I'm at like mid confidence with him. He's not going to slug his way to Rookie of the Year, but I don't think he's going to be as terrible as he has been in the last month. And I have a soft spot for Miguel Rojas because of his past. And at least Rojas, when he goes up there, it looks like he's having a competitive at bat.
Yeah.
As much as the results are not there. So they need more production from at least one of those guys. Not all of them. I'm not asking for Rojas to hit 300. No one should be. But they just need a little more from those guys.
Fiducia, by the way, 840 OPS down at AAA. He's a 26-year-old catcher. And I get like, hey, there's no way he's ready. I'm trying to put in perspective how bad Austin Barnes has been. Like, I'm kind of surprised at how quick people are like DFA Vesia, DFA Bickford, get rid of these guys. Like, if you were to translate Austin Barnes' OPS into a relief pitcher's ERA, it might start with a 2 and not be single digits, okay? Like, I can't stress enough how bad a 300 OPS on-base plus slugging is for a major league player. So I've long been the guy of like, hey, just because, Thor is not necessarily a dramatically worse option than Gavin Stone, the way Gavin Stone is pitching. Like, I'm typically protective of the jump from AAA to major leagues and saying, hey, it's not like just easy to go from 840 OPS to you'll figure it out. I'm just saying a 300 OPS for Austin Barnes. And again, if all it was like once a week he was catching and that was it, the problem is Dave Roberts can't help himself but pinch hit him for Jason Hayward in a key spot against the Giants. The Dodgers end up losing. He strikes out on 3 pitches. So I'm with all of these things. And I would point out, like, I know Barnes gets credit for his game calling and that kind of thing. With the increases in stolen base attempts, Austin Barnes has been really bad in that category. The arm strength is just not there. So as far as defense, like, he probably calls a great game. Sure, like, that's an impossible thing to quantify, but the pitchers say he does. So I'll take their word for it. They know better than me whether or not he sets him up for success. I just don't think he's adding real value for you defensively in addition to the 300 OPS on offense. So my point on all of that is when you look at the lineup, it can be really easy to get negative about the lineup because you don't love your 7, 8, and 9 hitters. And I think that's where I would just say it's going to be fine. If you trust 1 through 6 and you can get sort of league average production from 7, 8, 9, which I think they could with, if your bottom 3 is Chris Taylor, Miguel Vargas, and, Michael Busch, Johnny DeLuca, James Outman. Like, if some combination of that is your bottom 3, I think it's going to be fine. It's just a matter of, we know that's not necessarily what we're going to see. So can Austin Barnes figure it out the 2 times a week he's in there? Can Miguel Rojas become a league average or close to league average hitter the couple times he's in there? That's the big question. So last one here, level of panic. And I know this one will be a fun one in the comments, and because this is as divisive a conversation as there gets in the Dodgers. On the manager, AJ, 1, no panic at all. 10, what can we get for our best players? Where are you at on Dave Roberts and the level of blame / level of panic for him?
I guess a 5, maybe even a 4. Look, saying that I'm at a 4 or 5 does not like insulate Dave Roberts from criticism. Like, there's some criticism that has been valid for years against Dave about the way he manages a bullpen, pinch hitting Austin Barnes for Jason Hayward because, I don't know, he was asleep Uh, but this particular skid, when your team's ERA is in the bottom 5 of the league, when your bullpen is in the bottom 5 of the league, and you only trust one bullpen arm, it's really low-hanging fruit to blame Dave Roberts for everything. It's just bad logic to blame him for everything because he can't hit for the team. Do you know that the Dodgers had more hits today than the Giants?
Yeah, it's brutal.
He's not he can't go up there with runners in scoring position and hit. So I've been pretty even in my past about blaming Dave when it's his fault and not blaming Dave when everyone else is. So I'm at a 4 or a 5. If this is a playoff team going into the playoffs, there's a concern because of the way he manages his bullpen, the way he takes pitchers out too soon or too late, et cetera, et cetera. But in this particular skid, Dave Roberts is not my person that I'm hanging the blame on.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I had a 3 written down, which feels controversial as I scroll through the chat. Look, if you're playing poker and the 2 cards that you're holding are not very good, there's only so much you can do as a poker player. The best poker player in the world cannot guarantee himself victory just by the nature of how he plays the game. At some point, the cards you are holding matters. That's what Dave Roberts is dealing with. Like we talked about, he gets criticized on Friday for pulling Emmett Sheehan too quickly. And that's one thing. That's a whole separate conversation. Okay. So he pulls Emmett Sheehan, turns it over to the bullpen blows it. So then what does everyone say? Hey, you pulled your guy too quickly. So then what does he do? On Saturday, he leaves Bobby Miller in too long. He gets shelled. On Sunday, he leaves Tony Gonsolin in too long. He gets shelled. There's only so much you can do. When your bullpen is that bad and your starting pitcher start to go sideways, it's not on Dave Roberts to throw better pitches. It's not on Dave Roberts to give himself miraculously better options out there. The reason it's a 3 is because he makes incredibly dumb decisions at times. I think the Austin Barnes pinch hitting decision, I think not pinch running for JD Martinez in that game. I think maybe sometimes the guys he goes to, like in that Friday game, they went to Taylor Scott when apparently Caleb Ferguson was available later in the game. Why did we not go to our better reliever with runners on second and third? We could get into this all day. I don't think Dave Roberts is perfect. I just think the team that we are watching right now is not his. They lost 15-0 on Saturday. That's not Dave Roberts' fault. Like today, Tony Gonsolin was good, and then he wasn't. And what did you want him to do? Leave Gonsolin in? He did, and he got shelled. Take him out. Guess what? The bullpen sucks. So I just think from a managerial perspective, he's dealing with a team where on the pitching side of things, he does not have options. And to pin all of that on the manager, even though he's imperfect, like I'm saying he's imperfect. If you want to argue and say it's a 4 or a 5, I'm not going to get up in arms about that. I'm just saying if we're ranking who's most responsible for the struggles, the bullpen is number 1. The starting rotation is number 2. And I'd probably put Dave Roberts 3rd, just ahead of the bullpen, of the lineup, who I think is the least to blame. That's my rankings of those 4 things at least, AJ.
Yeah, and there's a comment in here about Sheehan was no hitting the Giants, and that decision was similar to Cash pulling Game Snell in Game 6. It's not anything similar.
Yeah,
we're talking about a Double-A starter who's never pitched in the majors. You can't tax his arm like that versus a former Cy Young Award winner in the World Series. That is not a fair comparison. Like you said, blame can be placed on Dave for certain things, especially historically. But this particular skid, it's pretty hard to blame Dave other than some decisions that were not great. If we're talking managerial staff, there's some blame to be had. The Dodgers are dead last, and by dead last, I mean like, I'm going to quote Moneyball, there's 50 feet of crap, and then there's us. That's where the Dodgers are in allowing runners to take second. I tweeted during the game earlier that a leadoff walk against this Dodgers team right now may as well be a leadoff double.
Yeah.
Because nobody's holding runners on. I don't know if this starts with Mark Pryor or starts with Andrew Friedman. I don't know how high, how low it goes. Yeah. But that is something that has to be addressed. Hasn't been addressed. No one on the pitching staff seems to care. Yeah. So if we're talking managerial staff, there's a bigger picture than just blaming Dave Roberts, because in sports, the coach always gets the blame or he always gets the credit. There's never enough nuance in it where, like you said, Dave deserves some blame for certain choices. He doesn't deserve the blame for this monstrous skid when our bullpen can't pitch their way out of a paper bag.
Yeah, Sheehan, by the way, was 5 pitches short of his season high in that game when he got pulled. So, I mean, you could make a case that they could have put him back out there for 1 or 2 outs. Do you really think that would have made a difference with the way this bullpen is pitching? If you're choosing between Nick Robertson or Taylor Scott for who you're going to go to in crunch time, it's hard to blame the guy who makes that decision more than either the guys who put the roster together or just the bad luck, I would say, that injuries have placed on this team in general. And so, to your point, I think the point about running is a great one. Can the Dodgers, how can they not be doing a better job of holding runners on? I've mentioned, I think the catchers are responsible. Everybody knows I'm a big Will Smith guy. Will Smith and Austin Barnes have not helped. I mean, there have been times when they've looked okay, but there are also times when some of the throws coming from behind home plate, it's 2 bounces before it gets to second base, which with the leads that the pitchers are giving up, it's not helpful. So I think there's a lot of nuance here, but from a managerial perspective, it's tough to argue. I would have placed more blame on Dave Roberts in past years, where if you're choosing between like, oh my gosh, why did you go to Vessier here when you had Ferguson and Phillips both available and Vessier stinks? That's a managerial problem. When it's Taylor Scott or Nick Robertson and that guy blows it, it's, what did you want me to do? Evan Phillips pitched 2 innings the night before. Shelby Miller's gone, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a tough spot for Dave Roberts to be in. So, there you go. There's our panic level. So AJ, I've got bullpen 1. I know we both agree on that. That's where our panic level is the highest. I have got rotation 2, which I think we both agree on that as well. Manager 3 and lineup 4. Is that how you shake it out?
Absolutely.
Okay. There you go. Let's get to some questions. I know there are people. There you go, Steven. We got a super chat, so we'll throw it up. Fire Mark Pryor. Give me your thoughts, AJ. I know Mark Pryor has become sort of a lightning rod. He's the guy who has long been credited with the resurgence in some guys' careers, a la Tyler Anderson last year. The Dodgers' ability to kind of turn some of these, unearth some gems. You could add Evan Phillips as a success story to Mark Pryor's track record. He has not found the same success with a bunch of these folks this past season. There are some rumors that once the sticky stuff disappears, Mark Pryor's magic disappears. I'm still positive. Again, I don't blame Mark Pryor for not turning Taylor Scott into an elite major league reliever. That's my view. Where are you at on Mark Pryor?
Tyler Anderson last year was one of the best pitchers in baseball.
Yep.
After the sticky stuff was banned, right?
Yeah.
He goes to the Angels and he's got an ERA north of 4 or 5. We have pitching arms this year, guys like Noah Syndergaard, who we were, at least some of us were really excited because of his past.
He was decent last year. Like, it's easy to forget he was like a 4 ERA guy a year ago.
Father Time may have run out the clock on him real quick because he stinks this year.
Yeah.
Here's the thing when it comes to pitching coaches. He has an incredible like past and history of success that is much larger than this year's smaller sample size of failure when it comes to the bullpen. Yeah. And when it comes to pitchers getting injured. Like, unless someone knows something I don't, Mark Pryor isn't the reason a lot of our staff got injured.
Yeah.
If someone wants to do a deep dive, ask him some questions about whether he's teaching their pitchers to slide step to try to like mitigate some of these runners. We can talk about that, but so far there's no info, so we can't speak on it in a confident and measurable manner. I'm not into the idea of firing Mark Pryor when we've had one not bad season. The pitching has been bad, but so far the Dodgers record makes them a little better than mediocre versus the years before when like Mark Pryor is literally a meme. They call it the Mark Pryor lab. Yeah. So Mark Pryor deserves a way more leash than talking about firing him now.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about this rotation. This rotation is basically middle of the pack as a starting rotation. We talked about how bad the bullpen is, but just the starters alone, it's middle of the pack. And when you look at some of the guys that, the rookies that they have had to call up, keep in mind that Noah Syndergaard was the team's option. He was their number 5 starter. He was supposed to be their number 5. It was Kershaw, Urias, May, Gonsolin, and then Syndergaard. Okay, Syndergaard's been a disaster. Is that Mark Pryor's fault? I tend to say no, but he's the pitching coach. So sure, maybe there's a little bit of hey, how come we can't get more out of Noah Syndergaard? Ryan Pepio was supposed to be the number 6 starter. He's hurt. Michael Grove, number 7 starter, has struggled, also battled some injuries. Gavin Stone, number 8 starter, was terrible. Bobby Miller, number 9 starter, pretty good. Who gets credit for Bobby Miller being more successful at the major league level than he has been at the AAA level? Emmett Sheehan, number 10 starting pitching option. So the Dodgers are on their 10th best starter and are still, and by the way, Dustin May has been injured across the stretch, so they lost him as well, and yet they are still middle of the pack. I think that says something about Mark Pryor. The flip side is the bullpen. We could say, is it his fault that Yency Almonte has regressed? Is it his fault that Alex Vesey has regressed? I'll be honest, on one hand, it's really hard for me to say what's the pitching coach's fault and what's the player's fault. But I agree with the thought. I will end the land the plane here. If we're going to give Mark Pryor credit for Tyler Anderson, and we're going to give him credit for fixing Evan Phillips and Yency Almonte a year ago, then I do think it's fair to come back and say, what happened to Yency Almonte? What happened to Noah Syndergaard, etc. I don't think we fire him. I think the team has been this isn't fireable level bad from the rotation, and I think the bullpen, there's some extenuating circumstances. SoCal 49er talking about Dave Roberts. If we had a few championships, he would deserve the benefit of the doubt. I think this is interesting, only because he won one. If not for the Astros cheating, he would have had 2. And so if he had 2 championships, I just believe Dave Roberts would be think about differently had the Astros not cheated him out of a second.
And on the other side of that coin, other than the Astros winning 2 World Series, one of which is baloney,
yeah,
what other competitive baseball team other than the Giants of the 2000s or of the 2010s, who to this day I still think just lucked into it?
Yeah,
credit where it's due, they won. What other team has had 2 or 3 championships in the last 15 years?
Yeah.
And the answer is nobody other than the Astros. And if you count it, well, then I've got some articles you should read. My point is, getting to a World Series is difficult. Winning a World Series, there's so much luck. There's so much that involved that is just out of the control of the manager.
Yeah.
That it's unfair to say, well, if he'd had a few championships, he'd deserve the benefit of the doubt. I totally get why that statement's being made. Yeah. Because there are things to criticize about Dave Roberts in his past. Bringing in Kershaw in 2019 to face 2 batters for emotional reasons. There's plenty. I don't want to re-go through all those choices that he made. All the people in the comments know what they are.
Yeah.
Certainly criticism to be levied at Dave Roberts.
Yep.
But at the same time, even though the talent level was high for most of those rosters, everything you read about Dave is there's nobody better at managing a team when it comes to personalities and rapport.
Yeah.
And that counts for a lot. It doesn't show up in the stat sheet. It doesn't show up necessarily in the championship rings because it's hard to win a World Series.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. We appreciate, again, the super chat there, SoCal 49.
For sure.
Greatly appreciate. We got one more super chat as well, and we're about to run out of time. So if we do have some super chats, folks want to leave some questions with those, we will get to them. Otherwise, we might just be able to get to 1 or 2 questions. But Swell and Sausage had this to say, again, another super chat. So thank you. Stop counting pitches. They still get injured. Lame. What's your take on the general, like, are you buying into pitch count and the track record of protecting guys' arms? Or do you think that maybe we've gone a little bit too far? With Sheehan, who throws 89 pitches, he's a young guy. He's thrown 94, I believe, was his season high. Should they have been that concerned about him throwing 100, 105 pitches at that point in the season?
If the Dodgers were the only team who did this, then we could have that conversation. But by and large, the entire league, the entire sport has moved to this model.
Yeah.
Because 30, 40 years ago, not every arm was throwing 95 plus. You can't compare the way we manage players to the way players were managed in the 80s and 90s. And by the way, Tommy Lasorda has plenty of history where people say he ruined arms. Fernando Valenzuela is one of them. So I think it's still fair to say that young guys should be on a pitch count.
Yeah. And I see in the comments, Swollen Sausage saying he was pitching a no-hitter. I agree with you, but he definitely wasn't going to get 9. He was at 90 pitches through 6. So best case scenario, they leave him out for 1 more. And then what? Like, then he's at 104 pitches. They're going to take him out. So I think the pitch count was what got him to a place of you're going to get pulled no matter what. and we could go in and talk. He only missed 4 or 5 bats. So, how dominant was he actually? I think he was very, very good. I don't think it was like, Hall of Fame level pitching performance. Had a couple walks, that kind of thing. So I hear the critique, and I hate seeing a guy pulled from the no-hitter, and I've probably become desensitized to it a little bit. But if we're talking about a guy who had 95 pitches through 8 and then they pulled him, I think that's a different conversation. He's not getting through the 9th no matter what. So that's the hard part there. But again, we appreciate the super chat there, Swell and Sausage. Thank you so much for that. Let's get to 1 or 2 more questions before we close this one out. If you've got those, throw those in the chat. I see some stuff about trade deadline targets. That's such a hard question still to answer because there's so much time to go and the number of teams that are, potentially going to be sellers to be determined. AJ, I'm curious, Zach Greinke, would you be interested in a Zach Greinke reunion for the Dodgers? Maybe filling out the back of that rotation?
If we're talking about old timers day, maybe.
Not on the major league roster. You don't want to see Zach Greinke? 4.65 ERA this season?
The short answer is no, and it's an easy answer. But I understand why that name's being floated. He's a fun personality, one of the more unique guys to ever play. There's obviously the Dodger history. I understand that. But from a practical perspective, no, probably not.
Okay. FIP of 4.36 there by Greinke. Look, if you told me the cost on Greinke was, hey, we want to do our guy Greinke a solid, we're going to let him go. So, so be it. We'll give him to the Dodgers for basically nothing. I'm interested because I think he's a better number 5 option and probably a guy that you could trust in some durability. And who knows, maybe even in a weird bullpen role come postseason, I could see him getting a little creative. So that's just a fun name I'll throw out there. Laura with another super chat. Happy Father's Day, guys. Thank you so much. AJ and I were talking just before we came on. Both got some girls at home. So we appreciate that. And happy Father's Day to everybody else that's joining us on their Father's Day night as well. So thank you, Laura, for the super chat. Thank you for being a faithful listener and watcher of us over the past couple of years. I greatly appreciate it. Let's get out of here. AJ, I've got to ask you a fun food question before we go.
Oh boy.
And did I ask you my convenience store question yet? I don't know if you and I have been on since I asked this. Oh, this is a good one. Feels like a good one for you. You walk into a convenience store, you get 1 drink, you get 1 snack, and you get 1 treat. Give me the 3 things you're pulling off 7-Eleven, AM, PM, whatever.
If I'm not on a diet, if I'm on a road trip,
You're on a road trip. The diets don't apply to this time.
And I'm on the West Coast where I can regularly find these particular snacks.
Okay, let's go.
I'm getting a Diet Coke. Y'all can roast me for liking Diet Coke if you want. I like Diet Coke. Okay. I'm getting some, if I've got enough cash anyway, because these days it's expensive, I'm getting some quality beef jerky, peppered or spicy, preferably. And I'm getting my number 1 favorite chips. They're harder to find, especially here on the East Coast where I live. They're Doritos Salsa Verde.
Okay. All right.
My favorite chips.
That's Diet Coke. Fine. I'm not a soda guy. Definitely not a Diet Coke guy. Beef jerky, I'm with you. It's like $10 for a pack of that stuff.
That's ridiculous.
Salsa Verde Doritos. I don't even know if I've had those before. So I'll have to. What color bag are we talking?
They're green. They're so good. They're obviously, spice is subjective. I don't find them to be spicy. Okay. If you eat a whole bag, they can catch up to you a bit. But they've just got a great. They taste like Salsa Verde. A little lime, a little bite. They're delicious.
BC says nobody likes Diet Coke. It just has no calories, so they have to pretend to. Do you want to defend yourself here, AJ?
I got so used to drinking it that I like that taste of the fake sugar. I've got no problem with people who say this because it's understandable. Like, I get it. I've got no fights. Like, that comment makes logical sense. I totally get it.
Love it. I love it. Lori agrees with you, by the way. Salsa Verde Doritos, so good. Good call there. So anyways, all right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here. Again, this is Dodger Heads presented by DodgerBlue.com. So let's see, Johnny, look, this is a good one. Funyuns and peanut butter cups. That's just a combo right there. Like you just got a Funyun in one hand and a Reese's peanut butter cup in the other. Hey, those 2 things separately. I don't know why both of those 2 things next to each other feels like a tough one. But anyways, thank you all for joining. Thank you especially to those who threw a super chat. Happy Father's Day, as Laura said. We greatly appreciate all of you for joining us. Check out DodgerBlue.com for all the latest news and updates. Make sure you subscribe, ring the notification bell here on YouTube as well tons of content. We are credentialed. And so anytime there's a home series, we've got people in there doing interviews. We've got interviews from this weekend series up on the YouTube channel now. We'll have tons of pregame videos and footage throughout the week as well. You can follow AJ at AJ on the guitar on Twitter. I am at Jeff Spiegel. Thanks again to those joining via podcast. If you're a podcast person, check out DodgerHeads. You can find us on Apple, Google, and Spotify as well. That is AJ. I am Jeff. As always, enjoy the rest of your night. And of course, go Dodgers.